Okay, so I told you I'd let you know why I thought it wasn't a great idea to include properties that are going to be changed often that are not uh, specifically relevant to that user in a user table. And in order to get there, I'd like to preface with some important architectural notes related to AppSheet. So, first off, AppSheet is an offline stable environment by default. That means is upon the instantiation of a client session, AppSheet is going to fetch data from your database and it's going to download all of it locally on your device and only communicate back and forth with the server whenever you make changes. There is a there are two settings that you can change within AppSheet to modify that sort of default app architecture, but generally, if you're going to be using uh, higher level security filters, you're most often going to have to work around this offline stable nature within AppSheet. Again, what this means for you and your app experience is that changes made in one app client are not going to be immediately visualized in another. And that can be frustrating depending on your use case. You may envision a use case like dispatching where it's a very high touch environment and you would like to see other users' changes as soon as possible. Um, so again, AppSheet does provide options that are available for use cases like that. You're going to want what's called quick sync in that scenario that allows changes to close to in real time populate in another client, which is a huge step up because up until about a year and a half ago, that was not available. And so the best you could get was whenever somebody made a change, if you did not additionally make a change shortly afterward, the fastest that change would show up in your application would be 30 minutes roughly. So that can be improved in some use cases, but not in all. And so it's important to know this is how AppSheet is architected by default. The other thing that is notable is that column AppSheet, whenever it makes updates, it is a column agnostic update, which means that even if you just change one column in one row, you're going to end up updating all of the columns for that one row. Now, let's apply this to our use case related to user-based logic. Why would, considering these two ideas, why would it not be advisable to include app logic properties inside our user table? In order to demonstrate that, I'd like to navigate to our Google Sheet. And like I showed in our data overview, we have two properties that are specific to app logic. And I just want to explain why it's not necessarily advantageous to have those in our user table relative to our user variable table. And in doing so, I'm making the case for the user variable table alongside a user table. So in this case, we're going to envision two separate users. All right. So we've got boss man. I'm not going to give him a phone number. The main thing is he is going to be an admin, and myself, I'm going to be just a standard user. So in my app experience, I am going to be modifying this project and project category field pretty often because I'm going to be consistently navigating in between different projects. And I'm going to be modifying the categories of photos that I want to see within those projects. So we're just going to envision that every 10 to 30 seconds, there is a modification to one of these columns for my row. Now, again, in conjunction with the nature of how AppSheet is architected, if boss man here wants to modify, say, my phone number, say he put it in wrong, he wants to modify it to, be correct. What's going to happen is I am going to make a change seconds, potentially a minute after that change happened, and it's going to overwrite this value back to be the old value because the last time I synced, it was this value. And after his change, my client never got that. And so the value remained the same. So whenever I input my project for field service one, or whatever the ID is for this project, it's going to change that phone number back to what it was prior to his change. Now, he's not making many other changes in the app, so he doesn't realize that. And it can go on for a long time without, reconciling the issue. So that's just one use case. There are other use cases that would be much more critical to your application. If you input an email wrong or something like that, you're trying to make the fix, the user is overwriting that. Something like that could be much more impactful to an app experience relative to a phone number. But I hope that demonstrates our case. So again, because AppSheet is offline stable and because it communicates column agnostic updates, so it's sending the whole row of data, even though I'm only updating this one column. So again, we're going to imagine that he changes the phone or even the user role. Let's imagine that he modified me to an admin. I needed admin permissions for something, right? As soon as I changed my project, if I hadn't synced beforehand, boom, it gets overwritten back to the old number and back to the old user role. So again, that's why I'm highly, highly, highly recommending that user tables are only editable by people that would be administrators or would need the ability to edit a user table, which in most cases is not going to be all users. And the properties that are going to be relevant to app logic, you would then input in a user variable table as opposed to the user table.